Hi everyone, Janie here. Welcome back to my garden. A huge welcome back to Michael Glassman. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure as always.
So we are on another episode of our Solving Problems in the Landscape series. If you haven't checked out our previous videos in this series, I really recommend you do, because Michael and I are going through problem by problem, just different ways that you can solve the problems in your garden, whether it be too much sun, critters in the garden,
Drainage.
drainage, privacy issues, so many different things. And today we're talking about something, it's a little basic, but it's probably the most important thing,
Yeah,
right?
I think it's the most important thing. Yeah.
And this topic is kind of how we got started thinking about this whole series. And that the topic is maintenance in your garden.
Yeah.
And you might not think it's a problem, but Michael, tell us your story about the clients that you work with that maybe don't maintain your garden.
Well, the problem is that we all have these wonderful ideas, and a lot of my clients can afford to do these amazing yards. And they turn to me after it's all done and the contractors finish them and the plants are in and everything. And they look at me and they go, well, who's going to maintain it? Like,
who's taking care of this,
yeah, who's
Michael?
taking care of this? Who's going to make it look wonderful? And it's like, I don't know, you. And here's the thing, and this is one of the things that I said to Janie, and I've said it before. Yeah, money helps make it all happen. But more important than money is time. Yeah. And we need to understand that you have to have the time to maintain it. I mean, and so a lot of people say, well, if you've got a lot of money, you can hire it. So let me tell you, out there is mostly mow, blow, and go. Yeah. They show up, they mow the lawn, they blow all your leaves into a corner. They don't even pick them up half the time. Yeah. And then they go.
Right.
And
which is very useful.
Which is very useful.
We don't want to do that stuff, but it's not what we're talking about.
No, what we're talking about is we need to prune your plants. You need to fertilize. At the garden, at the nursery, they always look great because they've got to keep their plants looking amazing. So you'll buy them.
Right.
And so they fertilize them. And then pruning. I mean, you go to some of the growers and once or twice a year, they actually cut back the plants so that they don't get all rangy and leggy.
Yeah.
These are things that are so important. And if you don't do it, and as I was saying before, it's like your body. You have to, you have to eat, you have to exercise, you have to take care of yourself. Otherwise, you start feeling lousy.
Starts going a little downhill.
Downhill. So, I mean, we have to think of it in terms of whatever we do, we've got to make a certain amount of time to be able to take care of what we're doing in the yard. And the reality is, if you can find someone to help you, that mazel tov, that's great. I mean, that's wonderful. But if you can't, then you're going to have to take these tasks one by one and work on them and get joy out of doing it.
Right.
If you're thinking, oh God, I got to go out there and I've got to prune, I've got to this and that, and it's a drudgery, you're going to hate it. You might as well sell the place and move to a condominium.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Because part of having a beautiful garden is maintaining that beautiful garden.
And I will be honest with you, I go back occasionally, clients will have me come back and see things. And I've gone back to projects where the homeowners love it. And I go back 5-10 years later and they're amazing. But I also go back to yards where the people don't maintain it. And it's like,
yeah.
I mean, what do you say? There's weeds all over. The trees are falling down. Limbs are breaking. I mean, it's a financial liability. I mean, if you don't prune your trees and they fall and crash into your house, I mean, that's dangerous. So, I mean, it's more than just aesthetics looking pretty. It's also health and safety.
Yeah. And I mean, budgeting, like you spent all that money, your clients spent all that money, paying you to install this beautiful garden, and then you can't just let it go.
You can't. In fact, we'll have more stories about that in terms of pruning.
You have a story?
Yeah, I might have one or two,
Okay, so let's get started with pruning, right? I wanted to talk about pruning today. You wanted to talk about pruning today. Tell us kind of the basics about that you think of when you think of pruning.
Okay, when people think about pruning, there's really two kinds of pruning. And you're a master gardener, so you learn this also. There's heading back, which means that's like if you have boxwood. You head it back and you make it into a shape. You create a globe, a square, or you cut it back, and that basically you'll take the plant and you'll kind of head it back.
Okay.
that's a lot of formal gardens.
Okay.
Anywhere, like when you go to Europe, when you go to the Italian gardens, you go to the French gardens, there's a lot of topiaries. Those are all they all use heading back.
Okay.
But then there's thinning out. So one of the most important things thinning out is you go into the center, because when it gets so dense, light doesn't go into the center of the plant. And so what you do is you thin it out. You go in there and open it up. So you actually see the branching structure. So you get air circulating in there. It also helps you with a lot of mildew because the air is going around.
So are you talking about, is this for trees or is it for shrubs too?
It can be both. Most shrubs you can just cut them back and cut them a little bit. But I even take some shrubs like butterfly bushes. I'll be real honest with you. A lot of people kind of keep them globe shaped. I like to thin them out. I like to go back in there because you start seeing branching structure. Olive trees. I mean, there are a lot of shrubs that they consider small trees, large shrubs.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of blurry lines.
Exactly. That I love looking at a silhouette of branches. To me, it's very architectural. It's very artistic. So I do a lot of that rather than heading back. Yes, I like a big, big blob but I refer to a lot of plants like Loropetalum.
Yeah.
A Loropetalum is a
French flower.
You're right. A lot of people turn them into, they look like ottomans on a couch.
Yeah.
I love the free flowing where they're more open. Japanese maples are the most important to not cut them and shape them. You want to let them open. You want to open them up. I actually do that for some clients. I'll come out there, not a lot, but I'll come out there because let me be real honest with you. There are some maples that are worth $3,000 and $4,000.
I know. I've seen them at the garden centers.
Exactly.
And it's like, what? But that's the type of thing that you have to maintain.
Exactly. And if you turn it into a round ball, it's like you're destroying this. You want the artisticness of being able to see in it. So when I go to jobs, I bring my actual pruning bag.
You mean your doctor's
My
kit.
doctor's bag, everything.
I love it.
And this is advice for your viewers because they're going to do a lot of this themselves.
Right.
Okay. So one of the first things that I recommend, the most important, are gloves. Good gloves. Now, let me tell you a story. Michael always has a story.
Of course, right?
Every year I prune my carpet roses. They are supposed to be about 18 to 24 inches.
Okay.
By the end of the season, they're 3 feet tall. 3.5 feet tall.
You live in California. You have a very long season.
And they're really happy. Well, one year I forgot to do it. And I thought, okay, it'll be okay. Well, by the time I actually went to prune them, they were almost 4 feet.
No.
The thorns were everywhere. And I took some cheapo gloves. And, I'm old. The skin tears in a minute. I looked like I had gone through the battle zone.
No.
Blood gushing everywhere. No. Oh, my God. So I happened to find these gloves. These are these heavy duty. I mean, they're amazing.
They're awesome.
They're awesome.
Where did you get these at?
I found them at Home Depot.
Okay,
they were on sale.
I'll see if I can find the link, but they're amazing. They're so thick.
They're so thick. And I find these, you can now get these heavy duty gloves. You can prune roses. You can throw your hands right into the rose bush and not be all ripped up. And then bougainvillea. Oh, let me tell you, that's like barbed wire.
If you ever get pricked by a bougainvillea thorn, I swear it doesn't hurt at first, but then as the day goes on, it gets worse and worse and worse.
It does. And I did the same thing. Well, wearing these, you can actually hold onto the branch with all. So that would be the first thing I would tell people. Heavy duty gloves. For those of us that also have really sensitive skin, these are you put them on your arms so that, again, when you're putting your arms into the plants.
These are the Farmer's Defense ones.
Yes.
Everybody talks about how great these are.
These are great. These are great. And everything. And I know I have to say, I do it all the time. I forget to put my gloves on because I like the feel of touching the plant.
Too, yeah.
But, after 10 Band-Aids and looking like you've gone through the war. And then a really good pair of pruning shears. Corona makes a really good pair.
Yeah.
These are ratcheted pruning shears.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, aren't these cool?
Yeah, so you use these kind of like for your trees and stuff?
Yeah, I do. For little shrubbery, more delicate things.
Yeah.
And I like them because they have a ratchet, but the Coronas are really good.
Yeah, I like these a lot.
Fitzger makes some really good ones. I mean, there are some really good, but again, this is where you don't skimp on your supplies. Really good gloves, really good pruning shears, and then you can go for it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And, you know, like our video is always what the gardener does, what the DIY does, what the designer does. Well, one of the things that I want to say is, and we can talk about that, if the gardener picks the right plant, you don't have to do as much pruning.
That's a fabulous point, because you kind of have to know your limitations and know how much you're willing to put the time and effort in. Right?
Exactly. And here's a perfect example. Janey has some of the most gorgeous butterfly bushes. So do I, but mine aren't so gorgeous because mine get 10 feet tall. So I'm constantly having to cut them down and let them start all over. You put the Miss Molly that maxes out at around 3 or 4 feet.
4 to 5 feet.
4 to 5 feet.
Yes.
And then there's the Pugster,
Yeah.
which is really low.
Yep.
So if you're a person that doesn't have a lot of time, but you want butterfly bushes and lots of butterflies, then you put in the Pugster.
Don't plant the big one. Plant the smaller one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So again, this is where the gardener comes in and can save a lot of time and effort.
Yeah.
The DIYer does it themselves, and then the designer says, "Oh, well, you can hire someone." Oh, yeah. Let's
Good luck with that.
Yeah, good luck with that. That you can find someone that would come, because yes, you can find pruning tree companies, arborists that will prune your trees, but they're not going to spend the time, and they're too expensive to do all your shrubbery.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that you have to think about it, and you have to think of where you're going to spend your money. Do you want to spend all your money putting into having somebody come out here and take care of your garden?
Absolutely.
No, just pick the right plant.
Pick the right plant.
Or
Absolutely.
get out there and do it yourself.
I always tell people, money's important. Yes, it buys the supplies, it buys the plants, it buys my time.
Yeah.
But when it comes to gardening, when it comes to landscaping, what's more important than money is time.
Yeah.
We have to have the time to be able to keep it up. We also have to have the time to be able to enjoy it.
Absolutely.
So if you're spending all your time trying to maintain your yard, and you can't go out there and sit out in your patio and have a meal and enjoy and sit with friends, well, what good is it?
Right.
So time is the most important thing we have.
And I always think, Michael has always said this to me so many times, of, right, the clients that you go to and they want a certain design in their garden, you warn them, right? And they don't care. They want a specific design, maybe really formal or something like that. And then it just all falls apart.
It all falls apart.
And I always think about that and how important maintenance is to solving problems in your garden. If your garden's not looking as nice as you want it to, think about maintenance.
Think about maintenance.
All right, so pruning is super, super important. But another thing that we wanted to add into maintaining your garden is the importance of fertilizing.
Oh, God.
Right?
Yes.
So just like you were saying, the garden, think of the garden as like a human body, right? And we eat every day, 3 times a day, maybe more, right?
Yep.
And your garden has to eat too. It's one of the most important things. I see it all the time. Give your garden the food that it needs. The N, the P, the K, it needs to have some nutrients to survive, because a lot of plants in the wild are growing in certain places because that is where they're available. The nutrients that they need are available. But what we're doing in our landscapes is we're taking a plant that's maybe native to Japan or maybe native to South Africa, and we're plopping it in our gardens and we're saying, go, come on, right? And so what we have to do is we have to supplement these plants. We have to care for them a little bit, right? So just like Michael says, being on a pruning schedule, I really think it's so important to be on a fertilizing schedule. And all plants are different in how much fertilizer they need. I always, as just kind of like a rule of thumb, I think the more the plant blooms, the more fertilizer it's going to need. Because think about those blooms, that takes energy, that takes food to be able to continuously bloom. So if you get plants that, like plants that I love, annuals from Proven Winners, that are specifically bred to bloom all season long, nonstop, you better believe that plant needs some fertilizer, and really weekly. Proven Winners does say you want to fertilize your plants every 3rd watering. It's a lot for those of us here, right? But that really makes the biggest difference if you actually do something like that and give your plant the food it needs. So I have a lot of people that will contact me and say, my super petunias aren't blooming, or this, it doesn't look very nice. And I always say to them, when's the last time you fertilized? Right?
Oh God, I hear that.
Like,
Yes.
when is the last time you fertilized these plants? Are you staying on top of it? Are you fertilizing? And a lot of people, they get kind of iffy when we talk about synthetic fertilizers versus organic fertilizers. That's something I definitely want to remind you all when you're solving problems in your garden. There's a place for both. Neither one are horrible. It's up to you whether which one you want to use, but you have to kind of know, you have to understand
Yes.
the theory behind a synthetic fertilizer and an organic fertilizer. So an organic fertilizer is great. It's going to give the plant the food that it needs, but it's going to do it in a much slower way, because what an organic fertilizer does is it actually feeds the soil. It gives the soil the nutrients. It allows the microbiome of the soil to beef up. It gives earthworms the food that they need to function there. And so it's really going to help your plant, but it's going to take a lot longer. Synthetic fertilizers are for those plants like super petunias, like superbenas, that take a little bit more oomph.
Oh.
They need a little bit more caffeine in the morning.
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? And so a synthetic fertilizer will actually feed the plant and give the plant the food that it needs to bloom. Neither one is better than the other. There are some situations where an organic is better versus a synthetic is better. Do what you need to do, but the most important thing is think of feeding your plants. Just
Exactly.
like, did you eat today?
No, it's so
Your
true,
plants need
because
to eat.
I had a client, I remember we put in, I mean, and your shrubs too. We put in for a screen Carolina cherry laurels.
Oh, yeah.
And they were beautiful, nice and lush and green.
Yeah.
And about 3 years later, the client emailed me and said, here's a picture. They're looking really bad. What's matter? And so the first thing I said to him was, when's the last time you fertilized?
When is it?
3 years ago.
Oh, okay. That'll do it.
So the very first thing, that's exactly what I said. I said, you need to give them some really good organic or synthetic. You need to get fertilizer on them. And sure enough, they did.
Yeah.
And they suddenly greened up. And that's what you're saying is so true.
The people who don't want to do synthetic, completely understandable, but those people should not have something like a petunia that needs constant fertilizer
Exactly.
or something like that, because it's just not going to show off for you.
Exactly.
It's not going to do what you need it to do.
Exactly.
So there is a time and a place for everything, and there's a responsible way to use everything, including Miracle-Gro.
Yes.
Right? I used to use Miracle-Gro all the time, and I used it responsibly. So it's the important thing, though, is if you're having problems in your landscape and you're noticing, like your clients with the laurels, if you're noticing an issue, I want you to think about, when's the last time I fed this plant?
Exactly. When was
When's the last time this plant ate?
yeah, 3 years is an awful. I try to fertilize. I will say I'm the designer, so the designer doesn't have the time. So I actually hire a company that does organic fertilizing twice a year.
Love
They
it.
come in the summertime and they come very, very late in the winter, and they organically feed everything. And well, you saw, I mean, everything is growing amazing.
Beautifully.
Yeah, beautifully.
Yeah.
And I spend the time and the money to have someone do it because I don't have the time myself.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, it's expensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I want the yard. I mean, I don't want people coming to my yard and going, why is everything looking half dead? You know, what does that say? Yeah,
you're a designer.
You're a designer. What does that say about you? So that's where the designer would say, maybe get an arborist, and this is an arborist, to come out, and they offer organic fertilizing twice a year.
Great.
To do that.
Yeah.
And expect that it's going to be costly, but your yard's going to look amazing.
Yep. Yep. Love it.
The DIYer can
do it themselves.
They can do it themselves. And you can give some examples of fertilizer that you would recommend.
Okay, so of course, Espoma, any of the tones are fabulous. Here in California, and I think all along the Pacific coast, is another one called Evie Stone, which is fabulous as well. Both of those are technically organic fertilizers, so they're slow-release fertilizers. When it comes to a synthetic fertilizer, you all know I love the Proven Winners fertilizer. It's the best. It in my mind, but they also have a continuous release one that I think is really important for those of us who don't want to fertilize all the time, because a continuous release fertilizer will slowly release into your soil every single time you water and with heat. And Proven Winners has one, but then there's also a fabulous one called Osmocote.
Oh, I know that. Yeah, that's a good one.
And then I'm not going to demonize Miracle Grow. I think Miracle Grow is exactly what it says. It's a synthetic fertilizer. It's bright blue. And it's gonna make your plants bloom. It is what it is, you know?
Right. And and when it's the middle of summer and you're fertilizing, I always recommend using a root feeder.
Oh, nice.
So if you can put the fertilizer in, and then you can shove it down into where the root zone is, it'll immediately get, especially an organic fertilizer, will get it to the roots as soon as possible. But I mean, everyone has their, you'll probably get comments. How could you say to recommend this and that? And I understand. I totally understand.
Yeah.
But it's a matter of certain things do certain things, and certain things work better.
The point is to educate yourself on what you're putting in your garden, and feed your plants.
And feed your plants. No matter what you use,
just feed your plants.
Feed your plants, because they're not going to look great if you don't do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, the next thing we want to talk about for maintaining your garden is something that we all know.
Yeah.
It's watering.
It's watering.
Plants need food, plants need water, right?
Yes.
But the thing that I want you guys to think about is the problems that come along with watering. It's probably the most common question that I get on my channel. How much do you water that plant? How often do you water that plant? How long do you run your drip irrigation for? And that is a very difficult question to answer.
It is.
Because it's different. Everybody's different. And that's kind of what we wanted to talk about for watering, for maintaining your garden, because part of maintaining your garden is actually assessing the plants for how much water they're getting. Do I need to back off on my watering? Do I need to increase my watering? This changes all year round.
Absolutely.
We're starting to get cooler right now, right? We're going into the winter season. And so I'm looking at my garden and I'm saying, okay, I need to back off on this plant. I need to back off on this plant.
Right. And it's also, and you're absolutely right. I mean, you may, and this is something I tell my clients all the time, Wednesday's a watering day.
Yeah.
And Wednesday you water. But Wednesday afternoon, you have 25-mile-an-hour winds that come through. Well, it didn't matter that.
Well, guess what? Thursday's watering day too.
Exactly, because what happens is the minute it starts getting windy, all those plants are gonna all that water is going to expire out of the plant, and it's going to go into wilting shock.
Yep.
Even if you watered it in the morning,
right?
By the afternoon, when you get 25-mile-an-hour winds, that's going to happen.
So, Michael, let me ask you a question. What are the signs of a plant that has not enough water?
Okay. Wilting leaves, they're kind of laying there.
Yeah.
And stems that are hanging over. And then a lot of times the leaves will turn yellow.
Okay. So what are the signs of a plant that has too much water?
Wilting leaves, turning yellow, and stems that are hanging over.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of times people will, that is.
It's a difficult thing, which is what we want to get across.
Right.
Is to be able to determine, is your plant getting too much water? Is it not getting not enough water?
Exactly. And people constantly, lots of old-time clients all the time will send me pictures and go, what's wrong with this? And again, it's wilted leaves, hanging over and everything. One of the things that's really important is, that I'm not saying things don't die because they don't get a lot of water, but a lot of times we kill it with kindness.
Exactly.
We give it too much water. I'm a big believer in a water tester. You push it in the ground and see if the ground is sopping wet, it's going to stay moist. You don't have to water.
Yeah.
I do that with all my potted plants.
I think that that's the key way to do it, because you can tell if a plant is stressed, right? Wilting leaves, yellowing foliage, and you can look at it and you can say, oh, I think it needs more water, or oh, I think it needs less water, I'm overwatering it. But the only way that you're going to tell is if you go right down to the soil and you check. So you can use a water tester like you have. You want to know my water tester?
What's your water tester? Your finger. I think that's a great one. You can't just set your clock and water and it lasts forever. What you need to understand is there are going to be times that you're going to water a little longer.
Yep.
Sometimes you're going to water a little less. And so you've got to be, again, it's maintenance.
Yeah.
You've got to be aware that you're going to have to, and sometimes you're going to, like During the wintertime, I turn off my irrigation.
Do you see? We leave ours on, but we'll turn ours off on rainy days. Yeah. So.
See, I turn mine off because I have the low gallonage shrub spray heads.
Yeah.
I just turn the whole thing off, and my plants have been established.
Yeah.
And they're pretty, a lot of them are drought tolerant. So most of the winter, now, if we start getting heavy winds,
yeah,
I might manually water that day.
Yeah.
But it's really important that you understand that not every day, not all the time do you water the same amount.
It's not on a schedule. And I think that's what we just said here was a perfect example of why you can't answer the question, how often do you water this? How many times a week do you water this plant? What size drip emitter system do you water this plant? Because it's different even for Michael and I who live in the same town, right?
And can I just say the one thing that, oh my God, this is really important. If the gardener puts in a drought tolerant plant, that doesn't mean, and I've seen this so many times. I know what you're gonna say. They buy this drought tolerant plant. It doesn't need a lot of water. They put it in the ground. They give it a lot of water in that day when it's planted, and then they stop watering.
And then they don't touch it.
They don't touch it, and the thing just shrivels up and dies. And they go, but it was drought tolerant. You have to understand, and this is what I tell my clients a lot, is that in the nursery, those plants get watered every single day. Absolutely. They come around and they water them in their pots. You are, especially if you're doing it in a dry season, you're taking a plant that's been watered every single day and putting it into dry soil that is so dry, the first day you put it in the ground and you put water around it, all that water is going to be sucked away from the roots.
By the surrounding soil.
Exactly. Yeah. So when you plant, and I don't care what plant you're planting, for the first 2 weeks of planting, you need to water every day and keep the soil around it moist. And then after 2 to 3 weeks, it'll start to send out its roots into the surrounding soil. But if you think, oh, because it's drought tolerant, it may take 2 years, sometimes 3 years, to establish a healthy enough root system that you really can cut back on the watering.
Right.
But if you immediately say, oh, it's drought tolerant, I don't need to water it, and you stop watering it, that thing's going to die.
Yeah. All right. So far in today's video, we have talked about the importance of pruning.
Yep.
We have talked about the importance of fertilizing.
Yep.
We've talked about the importance of watering.
Yep.
Let's talk about the importance of pest control to save your garden. If you're having pest problems, and we've talked about pest problems before, but what I'm talking about are like bugs and stuff like that. Bad insects that are maybe eating your garden or causing problems with your garden. So probably the main question that I get oftentimes is the question, why aren't my supertunias blooming? The petunia, Proven Winners has a petunia called Supertunia, and it's known for blooming absolutely all season long. However, if it gets a very common pest,
the worm,
the budworm, right? That's not everywhere in the United States, but it is in quite a lot of places. Supertunias are very susceptible to budworms. And if they do get budworms, that plant's not going to bloom at all. And so people will say, this doesn't work for me. This supertunias are nothing. It's a waste of money. Well, have you checked for budworms? And the other thing I'll say is budworms are really, really hard to find. You can look all you want. I've been there and I've been the crazy plant lady staring at my petunias for an hour and not seeing anything. So pest control is super important for maintenance in your garden. If you're noticing problems in your garden, think about the water, think about the sunlight, think about the pest pressure, right? So the treatment for budworms on petunias or on verbena or on geraniums is very, very easy. It's actually a naturally occurring compound called Bacillus thuringiensis that I have a schedule that I spray during the peak season of budworms. I will spray it on my plants, and that keeps my plants blooming all season long.
I get a lot of problems, my own and also clients, aphids.
Yeah.
Roses are totally covered in aphids.
Yeah.
A lot of the tomatoes are covered in aphids. A lot of crepe myrtles. Yes. People complain about crepe myrtles because they've got this sticky stuff coming off of them, honeydew and everything, and it's aphids.
Yep.
And people say, what to use it? Personally, my experience has been, I love ladybugs. When it's starting to get sunset or early sunrise, and I go to the garden store and I buy boxes of ladybugs. Yeah. And then you sprinkle them all over, and oh my God, they go after.
They go crazy.
Oh, they love it. And you can see them munching out. It's like, oh my God, they're at a buffet.
Yeah.
So I found that has been the one thing that I found that works. Ladybugs. The other thing that I found, again, non-toxic insecticidal soap.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But you have to spray it on there,
Yeah.
and you have to keep it up. But I've had more luck, I will say, with my ladybugs.
I agree. I love ladybugs. So there's controversy with ladybugs because a lot of people think that ladybugs will fly away when there's nothing there, and they do. But that means there's nothing there anymore.
There's nothing there anymore. So
that's a good problem to have, right?
And I love looking at ladybugs. And again, I mean, I'm not the biggest fancier of all bugs, but when the ladybugs land on you, it's kind of cool.
It's good luck.
It's good luck.
It's good luck. So of course, pest control is an important part of maintaining your garden. Your garden's not going to look good if you don't think about all these things, right?
And the one thing I will say is a lot of people, which I understand completely, do not want to use poisons and chemicals. Yeah. I'm very much against that. I don't like to use poisons or chemicals, but I found that some of the natural things, like for example, I'm sorry, the thing that creeps me out that I hate. I don't mind it outside so much as inside, are ants. Ants drive me crazy, especially if they're coming out of your refrigerator. They're coming out of the walls. What I found was there's a natural material made out of the oil of citrus.
Oh.
You can get it at the garden store. There's no poison in it at all. It smells like either orange or lemon, and you spray it on there and it
works good.
Oh my God, it works amazing. And that's what I do. I put it on their trails. Wherever I find it, I just spray that. Yeah. And as I said, it's not a poison because, you know, I have 2 dogs, you have Monty. People have kids and everything. So I'm not a big believer in using any poisons. Right. But the natural ingredients, which we also talked about, you know, with critter control, you know, like the lavender and the mint and the rosemary, those are natural materials, and a lot of bugs and animals hate that. So that it's great. And as I said, for the ants, oh my God, this stuff is so great. It's a natural citrus spray, and it's great.
I'll try and link that in the description down below as well. So yeah, that's the big point that we're trying to get across with this video, is that there's all these problems that you have in your landscape, but one of the easiest ways to solve any problems in your landscape, or a lot of problems in your landscape, is just maintenance, right?
Maintenance is maintenance, and it's something that people say, oh yeah, why am I going to watch it? But it is so important. We also did real quickly mulching.
Oh yeah, mulching.
Mulching. I mean, again, for people that have large spaces that don't want to spend all their life weeding.
Right.
Mulching it, for people that don't want to have to water as much, mulching is great because it holds the water in the soil without it evaporating. It keeps the weeds down. So again, anything that you can do to keep your maintenance lower.
Right.
Yeah. What do you use for mulch?
I actually just use wood chips. Free wood. That's key. Free wood chips that you get from an arborist or something like that. And it works beautifully. And if I don't have it, I will have weeds all over this garden.
I use black pathway bark, except in my house, as anyone that watched my video of my house, the dog eats it and throws up. So I've switched to river cobble, and it's the one thing, it's one thing that the dog will not eat. Oh, and you know what, can I just say this real quickly? We had one of your viewers asked, you know, we talked about all the critters, but we didn't talk about cats. I used to have an atrium inside my old house.
Oh, okay.
And I planted these wonderful ground covers. And the plants were growing really well, but all the ground covers were gone.
You have a cat.
I had a cat, and there was a very strange odor.
Ew.
I mean, so to be honest with you, what had happened in the atrium was the cat was using it. They were laying on their back. I came home one day, laying on the back, eating the ground cover, and then using it as a kitty litter box. The secret to that, and that's where it calls, when we're talking about mulch, some wood mulch, the cats will use it as a toilet. What I found is landscape fabric or not, but rock, river rock. They can't scratch in it. They don't like it on their boomer, and so they won't go to the bathroom there. So those people that have a cat problem, using the rock, the different size rock that's really pretty, will get rid of a lot of the cat problems.
Love it. Love it. All right, everyone. So that's going to be it for today's video for maintenance in the garden. Super, super important. I'm sure all of us have these problems. And now listen, Michael and I aren't going to say that we're perfect at maintenance.
No, not at all.
But at least we know where the problem is.
Right.
At least we know what's going on. So anyway, I will link the playlist to all of our Solving Problems in the Landscape videos in the description down below. I hope you all enjoyed this, and I hope you all have a chance to get in your garden today.